Hi, everyone, and welcome to Valley of Depth, a podcast from Archaea Media. Archaea builds media brands around the critical technologies shaping national security. We do this through Payload, which covers the space industry, Ignition, which covers nuclear energy, and Tectonic, focused on defense tech, through journalism, events, and original research. With Valley of Depth, we're going deeper, talking to founders, investors, policymakers, and military leaders who are building and shaping some of the most complex and consequential technologies in the world. Today, I'm excited to welcome Paul Lwin, CEO and co-founder of HavocAI, a company building scalable autonomous surface vessels designed to be deployed in swarms and controlled by a single operator. We talk about why Paul, a former Navy test pilot and engineer, left industry to build a new kind of defense company, what it means to field 12 boats in 6 months, how HavocAI is positioning itself for the next phase of maritime conflict, and why autonomy at scale, not just exquisite platforms, is the future of naval power. Paul, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Mo. Appreciate it.
Paul, so you're doing some pretty cool things. Tell us a little bit about Havoc and the company, the mission, and how you got started with it.
Yeah. So, HavocAI, we're a collaborative autonomy startup focused on the maritime space. We're focused on the maritime space because it's incredibly urgent and relevant right now. So we're dual use, and for the defense use cases, simply put, we're trying to make Admiral Paparo's vision of making the Pacific and unmanned hellscape a reality. So by building the technologies required to build thousands of autonomous vessels into the Pacific, and also building the systems required for humans to interact with them. For the commercial use cases, we're building autonomous vessels to monitor large areas of the ocean. Havoc is a very personal thing to me. So I came to the US when I was a refugee at the age of 10. And the first American I ever saw was at the embassy when they got us out. And that Marine represented safety and security to me as a kid. And when I was trying to figure out where to go to college, I decided to go to the Naval Academy. I got commissioned and I flew EA-6B Prowlers in Iraq and Afghanistan. And then luckily got the chance to become a Navy test pilot. And as a test pilot, one of the things I was looking at was the Pacific and how to counter future threats in the Pacific. And one of them, obviously, is China. Back then, we were looking at, hey, China is going to outbuild us in traditional ships and weapon systems. Their technology is catching up. You see that right now. They're releasing a new AI model almost every week. And then 6th generation fighters, right? They're showing videos of it almost every week. And then the third thing is they just have a lot more people. So we quickly realized that even back in 2015, that you were going to have to bring in innovation from the private sector, from Silicon Valley. So a lot of us left the service. We went into defense tech. And also a lot of my friends went into venture capital to try to help the problem from the outside. And that's why we started Havoc. We realized that most of the existing players weren't listening to the DoD when they said, hey, we need thousands of autonomous assets and we need it over the next 2 years. And they were just building 1 or 2 remote control boats. And we realized we could build the technologies needed. So that's what we did. 18 months ago, we started Havoc.
That's an incredibly powerful story.
Thank you.
We're going to unpack a number of items that you mentioned, including sort of the vision in the Pacific. But before we get to that, tell us a little bit about the DoD exercise that you had with your 12 autonomous vessels. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's an interesting part of the story that stands out to me, at least. And what did you learn from showing your tech to the military so soon into the company's life cycle?
Yeah, definitely. From the beginning, we raised about 1.2 million pre-seed, and kind of what we wanted to do was we wanted to show that you could build at scale, right? The prototype wasn't one vessel. The prototype was to build, 10 to 12 vessels and say, hey, look, we could do this with a team of 5 people in 3 to 4 months. But the second piece of it is, I think you see it a lot in defense tech. You built this one prototype, and then you show it over and over. You show it being remote controlled and going in a straight line. We wanted to show that, hey, we're not building vaporware, right? That we could within 6 months put it into the DoD user's hand in a actual DoD exercise and see how it works, and iterate with the users. So I think our pre-seed investors thought we were nuts when we said, hey, there are 5 of us and we're going to build 12 vessels. We did the same to the DoD when we were like, hey, we're building 12 vessels. We want to bring it to this exercise called Silent Swarm. And I think they thought there's no way they'll build 12. They'll just build 1 or 2. and it'll be remote controlled. So they let us into the exercise. And in July of last year, we went to Michigan. We actually rented a lake house to launch these vessels from, and we had 12 of them on the lawn, that were being put back together after shipping. And at this exercise, you get a DoD assessor assigned to you. And our DoD assessors were people that have been using USVs or unmanned surface vehicles for the last few years, testing all of them out there. And you could see as soon as they looked at 12 of them, you could see them start to put things together and say, okay, there's something crazy happening here. To the point that we had the assessor call his boss and say, hey, you need to come see Havoc. They have 12 vessels. And the boss, we only heard their side, the one side of the conversation. So we think what they said was, oh, it's just going to be remote controlled. And how response was, he said, it can't be remote controlled because there are only 5 of them and there are 12 vessels. And so we started launching all 12 vessels over 10 days for 10 hours a day. And we just did things on Lake Huron over and over. And that, I think, kind of highlighted the maturity of our software stack and our technology, that the DoD, the Navy, actually ended up forcing us to sell some of our prototypes to them. And they've continued to buy prototypes. So we're 18 months old, that we've built 42 autonomous vessels and delivered 32 of them for various DoD customers.
All right. Well, let's unpack that for a second. So you raised your pre-seed investment, if I have the timeline correct, and then you're telling your investors we're going to do this, we're going to bring and then they're like, okay, yeah, sure, and then you do it. So from when you raised that capital to the demonstration on Lake Huron, how much time was that? How long was that?
So we got the money, the pre-seed funding, I think it probably hit the bank March 1st.
Okay.
And then, we got the money. We bought all the hardware. Obviously, we were working on the software the whole time. That's the beauty of building something that's software-defined hardware, right? You don't need to wait for the hardware. So that was March 1st, and this exercise was July.
Oh,
right?
amazing.
So, from, the company started in January of 24 to July, we did this exercise, and it was phenomenal. I think, one of the things is I think once you build something that is compelling and kind of shows that, hey, we weren't going for perfection, right? We were going for progress. I think people jumped on it real quick. Obviously, we focused a lot on making sure that our hardware and software was open and modular so that people could integrate with it. I think that was one of the reasons at Silent Swarm we became popular, right? It's that all these people had sensors and there wasn't, an autonomous boat to put their sensors on, and there wasn't even a manned boat to put their sensor on. So we let them strap all these crazy sensors. There are pictures of essentially a cell phone tower on one of our boats, and the boat is still floating. And so I think that's kind of what kickstarted it. And then the DoD customer saw, hey, here's a company that's actually listening to what the DoD is saying, right? Make everything modular, make it open architecture, make it affordable, and the word they made up of a tradable. So that's what we did. Obviously, that led us into a successful seed round immediately after Silent Swarm last fall.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the DoD demand side in a second, but tell me a little bit about the early team. Like, who is it? Who have you assembled? And where's the company based right now?
Yeah, so the company is based in Rhode Island, but since we started the seed round and we've made revenue, we've had to expand. The reason we chose Rhode Island is I think you're familiar with it if you spent a lot of time in Newport, the America's Cup ecosystem. Right, there are a lot of boat builders in the state of Rhode Island. It's called the Ocean State for a reason, and so we had to figure out how to not get distracted building the boat. Right, we didn't want to be a boat company. I think building boats, it's cool, but it's not what makes these things compelling and awesome, right? And providing capability. So we looked at what the other competitors were doing, and we realized they're spending way too much effort rebuilding the boat. And so we worked with boat builders in Rhode Island, specifically one who was using very innovative technologies, who knew, the scale we were talking about, like thousands of boats, not like 10 boats. And so that allowed us to abstract away the boat, and so we could focus on integrating commercial off-the-shelf hardware like radio sensors, compute devices, and focusing mainly on the software. Right.
Yeah.
And the software is what makes our boats do these cool things you've seen videos of.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so we need to unpack that too as well.
Yeah.
You're so yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But let's go back to the DoD. Tell us a little bit about sort of the current demand signals from the DoD and U.S. allies in terms of autonomous maritime systems. Let's like kind of take a step back and tell us like where are things right now, and where do you see sort of the push and pull of supply demand?
Yeah, so I'll just talk about the most relevant things right now. Right, if you're tracking the reconciliation bill, there's I think over $3.3 billion for USVs, right, unmanned surface vehicles, and there's a reason for that. It's that if you think about the Pacific, it's huge, right? It's 8,000 miles wide. So we are going to try to build a lot more DDGs, destroyers and carriers and capital warships, but we also have to augment that. What the Navy is calling this hybrid fleet, because the reality is just that China is going to outbuild us in ships, right? So how do you counter that? And it quickly become, hey, build affordable vessels, right? It's not something Havoc invented or any of the companies invented, right? The Ukrainians showed us you can do it. If you look at what happened in Ukraine, they took remote control boats that were probably 100K to 200K, and they used it to defeat the Russian Black Sea Fleet. I think that got credibility to the entire defense tech ecosystem, where now the US DoD was comfortable working with companies that were buying commercial off-the-shelf components and making them into weapons, right? Before that, it was the primes, and there was always this thing where the DoD would be uncomfortable with just people making an autonomous boat for $100,000, right? The Ukrainians changed that dynamic. So that's where the demand signal is coming from. But even before this reconciliation bill, you look at the previous administration and they were talking Replicator, right? Thousands of assets into the Pacific under Secretary Hicks. And so the demand signal has always been there. It's that the industry wasn't catching up, right? Most of the existing players before we showed up were, only showing one or two boats, and they were kind of abstracting away autonomy and specifically collaborative autonomy. Right? They were too busy building the boat, and we say, hey, humans have been building boats for 5,000 years. Let's focus on the software, right? Let's focus on the capability.
So let me. So what you're saying is, on the surface, no pun intended, very seems very very obvious, right? Like, let abstract away what we've been really really good at and focus on what is hard. Why? What is the argument for the companies that are like? If you could think of sort of, if you were to put yourself in their shoes, why would they be abstracting away the autonomy and building the ships themselves? Like, where do you think the model there is?
I think it's overcomplicating shipbuilding and even boat building, right? I think you get into this thing where you are like, oh, the Pacific. You watch these videos and you watch these giant swells, and you're like, I have to build the most resilient and reliable boat, and then you think about it and you say, wait a minute, the Polynesians were crossing the Pacific on wooden trimarans, right, and catamarans. So it's been done. Yes, the Pacific is crazy, but you shouldn't spend all your effort on shipbuilding and boat building. Oh, by the way, we're all venture backed, right? The margins in welding aluminum is low, right? Welding aluminum isn't a Silicon Valley thing, right? It is just welding aluminum. And so also, you should look at World War II, right? How did we build that many ships and tanks and aircraft in World War II? Is that we took existing industry and we reinvented them to build ships and airplanes and boats, right? And so that's what we're doing. There's existing commercial boat builders that have existing spare capacity. So we took it and we made it work, which allowed us to keep our costs down, right? We're 10 times more affordable than the nearest competitor.
And if you could, now you're a Navy guy, you've served and you've done a lot of amazing things for the country. Tell us a little bit about where are the capabilities in the Navy today? Where are the gaps? Actually, let's talk about that. What are the gaps in the Navy's capabilities today?
So the gaps is in the fact that it's just common sense, right? If you look at a manned ship, it can't get too close to the other side, right? Because the other side has missiles that are going to shoot at it. So you think about a guided missile destroyer. It's about $2 to $3 billion to build. It's got 150 people in it, and say Taiwan, right? If it gets too close to Taiwan, obviously Taiwan's pretty close to the mainland. And so you are at risk of 150 human lives, right? But also, $2 to $3 billion, right? At the end of the day, war is economics, and you've seen that in Ukraine and the Red Seas, right? What the Houthis are doing to us. So that's the capability gap. So if autonomous systems take the human out of the loop, right? But here's the thing. Just because you took out that 150 human doesn't mean you can just go take a destroyer and make it autonomous and still cost $5 billion, right? Because if you think about that, that math's not going to work out, because if they blow up 100 $5 billion ships, we still lose, right? So it's how do you even the playing field? And now that's where the word attritable that the DoD started to use to come in, right? You want them to shoot their $1 million missile at $100,000 boats, which is how much we sell our autonomous vessels to the DoD for. That's going to even the playing field, right? The other concept of just taking, $1 billion ships and making them autonomous, personally, I don't know that the economics of warfare they will work out.
Do geopolitical timelines right now impact your business decision making? So let's just say let's take the geopolitical clock and let's throw out a year 2027 timeline around Taiwan. We already know we know what that potentially represents. Do dates like that influence your business decisions, hiring? Does it influence your product roadmap?
I don't think it does. I think, we are an early stage startup, and from being in the same shoes, you just got to build fast, right? And you got to iterate fast. And so that's what we do, right? Because we take the software first approach, we are able to act more like software companies in Silicon Valley, right? We can iterate and move faster. So we're already moving fast. I don't know that 2027 is forcing us to move faster, right, and making decisions, because that's still 2 years away. 2 years for a startup is an eternity, right? And if you can't build great products and find product market fit in 2 years, you probably are building the wrong thing, right? Some of our competitors are doing that, right? Raising an obscene amount of money and still not finding product market fit. So we want to find product market fit. We want to find it quickly, and we want to be efficient with our capital.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about your product. So walk us through the current kind of product architecture. What do you have today, and what does that kind of product roadmap look like over the next 5 years?
Yeah, definitely. So we started the boats I described that we took to these exercises and that we've sold to DoD. They are a 14-foot vessel. So the 14-foot, they're completely electric. And we started there because we realized that with a team of 5, if we built a boat that's too big, we wouldn't be able to put 10 or 12 in the water every day, right? It's just physically, right? We would need cranes and all these equipment, and it's just hot. It's just physically demanding to operate large boats. So we realized about 14-foot is probably about the right size where a team of 5 people can every day launch 10 of them without equipment, right? That's important also there, because we think that the small USV, the 14-foot vessels to probably like 25 is the sweet spot. If you're talking about deploying thousands of these off of islands in the Pacific, you're not going to have the infrastructure, right? You're not going to have $1 million cranes everywhere and ATVs and all this support. So our vessels, we can push it out from a beach, right? So that's all you need to operate our vessels. It's the boats, people, and the beach. And so we started there to be able to get thousands of hours of 10 boats working together, and we have that now, right? So we have about 8,000 hours of 10 of our vessels every day working together, and so now we're starting to build bigger boats, right? Our software is mature; it's been proven on the smaller rampages. So now we're building the Seahound, which is a 38-foot vessel that's going to go 1,000 miles with 1,000 pounds of payload and go greater than 30 knots. Now, that's just a boat building exercise and an integration exercise, because we have matured the software more than any other player out there. We know when the Seahound is built and put on the water, our software is going to work, and the Seahound is going to work together with the Rampages. So those are the 2 vessels. So the Rampages are meant to be long endurance. So they have solar panels out front. So you'll go 50 to 100 miles to a target area. You'll sit there, let the sun fully recharge the batteries, and then you can sit there to do other things, right? Whether you keep going or you just wait until you detect something and you go to the end game or something like that. So the Sea Hound is meant more for like technical use cases of chasing down other vessels. What we're also doing is that now we're starting to partner with shipyards that are building phenomenal vessels. But they don't have autonomy, right? They like I said, shipyards are more caring about welding aluminum and building vessels that can survive the Pacific. So they don't really focus on the software. So now we have offered them our software. So this summer, you'll see us take a 42-foot vessel that's this shipyard in Hawaii is building and make it autonomous. And by the end of 2025, we would do the same thing to a 100-foot vessel that they are building. We'll put it in the water at 100-foot medium. We'll make a medium USV essentially. And that's been our strategy, right? It's get the software so mature that we can go to ship builders and boat builders and say, hey, look, you can turn your vessel into an autonomous vessel. We think that's how you're going to get thousands of vessels into the Pacific. We don't think, it's one or two startups that can say, hey, we're going to build thousands. You got to use the existing shipyards and convert their vessels to autonomous vessels.
So I know this conversation is largely centered around military use cases, of course, but you have me thinking a little bit. Okay, so basically, you're building a software stack that can be effectively retrofitted into any type of hardware, a hardware platform, hardware vessel to create autonomy. Are you kind of thinking, as far as your business model is concerned, like a commercial use case where you can retrofit any type of boat and just effectively make it autonomous, which can have its own, let's just say recreational use cases?
Yes.
Like, is this in the roadmap, or are you thinking purely for the military?
No, it is. So commercial is in the roadmap, not for like a B2C type thing yet. But we have thought about that, right? But even in the commercial space, if you think about all the wind farms and the offshore industry that we're building everywhere across the globe, there's a requirement for these sites to get monitored. And right now, they're just using manned vessels because it is the easiest and most affordable option. There are some unmanned options out there that you probably know about, but they're just incredibly expensive, right? So right now we're trying to convince these companies that operate these large offshore sites to do pilot programs with us to show that, hey, our boats are $100,000. You can have 100 of these, monitor 1,000 miles, and it'll still be more affordable than renting a shipping vessel, and outfitting it with sensors, which could cost $10,000 a day per vessel. That doesn't work out. So I think we have a legitimate commercial use case for industry, but also the self-driving boat use case, right? I think it is cool. I think there are things we could do all the way up to ships. Right. At some point, we should automate ships because it will make it safer. Right. You look at what just happened recently with ships running into bridges. We just had it happen twice. There was a ship in Norway that grounded itself. Autonomy can prevent that. Right, to make sure that kind of things happen. So those are the kind of use cases we're exploring. But at the end of the day, if a commercial boat builder wants to work with us to put some self-driving capability, we will be open to that, right? I think as long as they have fly-by-wires control systems, it'll make it pretty easy for us to integrate.
Yeah, well, we all know people like to spend a lot of money on their boats, and
Yes.
the Monaco Grand Prix was just this past weekend, so that's on display as much as any time else. So anyway, it's interesting. It's fun to know that you're at least thinking about it. Okay, let's go back to the system. What level of autonomy have you actually achieved in live demos so far?
So going back, right, what we did was figure out, hey, what are the capabilities that the defense user needs from autonomous assets, right? And so we came up with this concept of a playbook. If you think about, say, a football coach, right? You're a football coach and you have football players, and you call a play, and the players work together to figure out how to achieve that goal. That is essentially what we built, right? We essentially call our autonomous behaviors, a playbook. So as a coach, you'll say, hey, I need X n number of boats to transfer supplies between two islands. And then you'll say, this is, island A, this is island B. We actually do this right now we give you a command and control UX where you'll click on two sites. And you'll say, I need, 10,000 pounds of supplies moved. And our system figures out, hey, you need 20 vessels. These are the 20 vessels in this area. And those 20 vessels get the message like, hey, now we are in a contested logistics play. And they start self-driving, right? Navigating to the first pickup point, and then they'll pick up the supplies and then they'll ferry back. So that we can already do, right? That was before we were talking about when I had the picture up. That was what the Navy was testing, contested logistics play. So there are other things we can do autonomously, like, hey, here is an area of the ocean. I think there's something of interest in this area of the ocean. Go find it. And 10 to 20 boats will walk to search that area, right? Whether you use radar, your camera, or even acoustics, sonar to find something. And when you find it, you report back to the human. And the human can, at that point, tell you, hey, I want you to schedule that vessel, or I want you to, go kinetic, right? What the Ukrainians have done. So all of those are autonomous plays that we have already developed, and that already works, right? Because they are boats, they are pretty easy, right? So they're not like self-driving cars. I think that's where your question was going. So we're not going to say that you can, just press a button and these boats kind of drive themselves around and make decisions. Humans are on the loop, right? The human does tell the boats, hey, I want you to, search an area, or I want you to create a giant sensor network. And our system take the intent that the human has provided and translates that into autonomous behaviors from the vessels.
So how are you designing for contested environments? So GPS denied, comms jamming, spoofing, and can the USVs ultimately make mission level decisions without sort of a persistent link?
Yeah, so they're autonomous. So say in that contested logistics play, they'll keep transferring supplies between the two beaches until a human says to do something else, right?
Oh, I see.
That requires no link. But also every boat has SATCOM, so we use Starlink right now. And also an IP-based mesh radio. So we essentially create this resilient data network between these boats. So if you think about it, the use cases for these vessels are distributed, right, over thousands of miles. So because they have Starlink and line of sight mesh radios on them, you essentially create this giant resilient mesh network over 1,000 miles. So to jam the entire network, you would have to jam every Starlink on every boat and every mesh radio on every boat, which is crazy, right? In the Navy, I flew the EA-6B Prowler and the Growler, hundreds of millions of dollars airplanes. That's what you would need, right? And that's a victory. If we force the enemy to jam this network that's been created by $100,000 boat with their aircraft that's cost $200 million, we're going to shoot it down. Right. So it's incredibly resilient just by nature of using Starlink and mesh radios. And the second piece of that is that, you've got to put a lot of energy out to try to defeat this network.
What's the next kind of frontier technically for you? Is it sort of decision making for these USVs?
You just hit it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we started because I think a lot of people jump the gun and they skip the stuff of like figuring out platform autonomy, right? Platform autonomy is self-driving cars, right? How does a boat drive itself and not hit anything? So we had to work on that. Then you have mission autonomy, which is you've got 10 boats now, and they're doing contested logistics, or they are searching an area of the ocean. How do they execute a sophisticated search algorithm collaboratively in comms denied environment without GPS, right? Things like that. Those are mission level autonomy things we have to figure out. And now we're taking the next step of, we've up to now deployed 42 vessels. Over the next few months, we'll probably get to hundreds to 200s. That's going to become overwhelming for the human, right? So decision making aids, even using foundational models to kind of help the human make decisions, right? Think R2D2 as you're sitting at your command center that says, hey, these 50 boats over here, they're detecting something and they're probably detecting a destroyer, right? What do you want to do with it? And then rather than me like figuring out the tactics, maybe it recommends tactics based on the payloads and the weapons that these 50 boats have to make it easy, right? Because if you think about it, like even no matter how autonomous they are, if you're trying to monitor 1,000 vessels and supervise them, it's just going to become overwhelming. So decision making is kind of the next frontier. You need data to do that, right? You need data to train your models on, and that's what we are after.
So if autonomy, and just going back to your business model, if sort of this autonomy layer is effectively ultimately your core IP, when you think of like monetization, is the business going to be, and you've alluded to that, you've alluded to this a little bit earlier in the conversation. You're working with a third party supplier in terms of like the vessel itself. In the future, how do you think about scale in a defense market that traditionally buys like hardware line items, right?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's why we started by building the whole thing, right? People are like, why did you go build the boats? One, there were a couple of reasons. We couldn't find a partner that was already making a USV that was affordable, right, in the 100,000 price range. So we knew we had to go do it. The second thing was we knew that it would be hard for the DoD to wrap their mind around. I buy this boat, I buy this software, I make them work together. But surprisingly, the DoD is already going there, right? Because they also realize that this interoperability and like kind of mixing and matching might be the right answer. So they are figuring it out. Right now, if I were to just try to sell them software, I don't think we would be as successful. You can look at some companies, some even big name companies that have tried to do this, right? Sell an autonomy layer without the hardware, and they're kind of stuck in this experimentation phase, right? Because we built the whole platform end to end. Including C2, right? We built our own C2 in UX that allows one operator to supervise hundreds of vessels. It makes it easy for the end user, the DoD, to be like, okay, I can buy this and we just sell the whole thing priced up. But we're working with the DoD to figure out what kind of pricing model makes the most sense and what allows them to contract out right now, right? Because there's some specific rules around software subscriptions and things like that. But that's, working with the customer to figure out the policy issues.
Talk a little bit about the competition. How do you think about yourself versus the competitors that are out there?
We're obviously 18 months old, and we're not as well funded as some of the bigger names there. But I think, we've made an impact to show that you could take affordable things, focus on the software, and really go do some sophisticated use cases with the defense customers. So I think we're there. We also, just like the DoD, if you listen to the DoD, they're saying there will not be one winner. Right. And they are right. Because just in the next 2 years alone, we have to build thousands of autonomous assets of all sizes, right? All the way from, small USVs to ships, right? And it's not going to be one competitor that does it, right? And it's because, the DoD is kind of hesitant to do that because of the JSF debacle, right? And just primes in general. And just from thinking through how do you build 1,000 vessels? You quickly realize multiple people have to do it. So we think it is an area where multiple startups, even people that we call competitors, can work together, right? So because we've proven our autonomy stack in real life exercises being used by DoD users, the DoD's interested in us integrating onto other USVs that they might have. So we've opened it up to these companies to say, hey, if you want to work together, we will work with you to put our autonomy stack on your vessels and provide the DoD immediately with thousands of autonomous assets.
So hypothetical for you, if a prime wanted to build a HavocAI clone, what do you think they would struggle to replicate? Or do you think, yes, they'd be able to build it, but it would be 10 times as expensive?
You just hit it, right? Their business models don't allow them to build affordable things, right? Because there's no, they look at it and that's not what they do, right? They built 1,000 JSFs or 100 DGs, right? And the primes are structured to do that. Startups are structured to build a lot of things affordably and with good margins, right? Obviously, we're still a business, so we have to maintain that good margins. And I think that's where people always ask, well, couldn't someone just throw $600 million and do it. I will tell you, there is a company that has raised $600 million to try to do that. And I would venture that we are ahead of them, right? We have way more those autonomous vessels than they do with customers. So my counter to that is a money thing. Is there
Yep.
are startups already that are well funded in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and they haven't figured it out. So I can't imagine, even if a prime put $1 billion to it, that they're not going to figure it out. You have to understand the problem deeply, and you have to understand technology deeply, and that's kind of what we bring to the game. Is understanding how to do it affordably and quickly, and iterate over and over.
What, in your opinion, has Replicator changed? What has Replicator actually changed from your vantage point? Do you think it's a signal or like a real budget shift in DoD?
I think it has, right. I think all the replicator experiments have allowed both Congress and the executive branch to be comfortable with saying, "Hey, we're going to spend $3.3 billion in the reconciliation bill for USVs." Right. I
Yep.
don't know that a few years ago they would have been okay with it. Right. I think if you're keeping track, the DoD is doing a lot of good work. We have participated in a lot of them over the past year of trying to figure out how do you integrate autonomous systems into existing warfighting structures. And so I think they're getting more comfortable. And I think, Replicator obviously started that. Same thing with, the Ukrainians and what the Houthis have done to us. I think those three things are allowing the DoD to realize that warfare is changing.
Do you think that the incentives, the right incentives are in place for buyers to move quickly? I mean, the Pentagon talks about scaling autonomy, but curious what you think about that.
I think so. I think, this administration especially is all about trying to break down some of the bureaucratic blocks, right? That prevents a company like Havoc from selling thousands of these things to the DoD. But, even in the previous administration, I think you were starting to see under the Replicator program, DoD organizations that focus more on end results, right? And capability over bureaucratic things, right? So, we would talk to them and say, "Hey, how much do you want us to focus on, this bureaucratic, like checking the box?" And they would say, which I never heard them say before. They would be like, "Don't worry about that yet. Like, figure out, collaborative autonomy, figure out capability, make it work, and then we'll help you through that paperwork drill," which is refreshing for a startup to hear, right? Because a lot of times the value of that happens because you're chasing all of these, acronyms, right, in cybersecurity, physical security, and just contracting, right? And I think since we have started, we have seen that the DoD is more willing to work with startups to try to figure out how to overcome these challenges.
If another hypothetical view, if the Secretary of Defense was on the show right now as our second guest, what policy kind of change would you request or ask for?
I think implement what's in the reconciliation bill, right? There's
Okay.
$3.3 billion. I think it is absolutely right. But, don't let it get stuck in experimentation, right? Get it into the hands of end users. There are all of these like task forces and operational units that are tasked with figuring out how to use autonomous and uncrewed systems that already exist, right? Use all the things you're going to buy from this $3.3 billion in funding and get it out there, right? And figure out what works and iterate, right? Don't use that $3.3 billion to fund a program that's going to take 2 to 3 years to deliver a capability, right? We don't have 2 years. That money should go to companies that can deliver thousands of autonomous assets in the next year, right? Like improve it, right? And not have been talking about it for the past 2 years. So I think the policy is already going there. I think it's more like the decision making, right? They should really compete, right? They shouldn't bite off on one winner that's being loud and well funded to say that's the one winner, right? You don't want to make the wrong bet here. Let capitalism win, right? Let us fight it out and recompete it over and over.
Now, you mentioned a number earlier, 600 million. How are you thinking about capital needs to get Havoc to scale? Like how much capital? What's the rough idea of capital you'll need, and how are you thinking about fundraising over the next year or two?
Yeah, obviously we don't need as much money as some of these competitors because our boats are 10 times less, right? So you could
Yep.
use that 10 number to
Yeah.
kind of make sense, right? But we also know that, we're defense tech in a hardware space, right? Even though we're a software company, and capital is always a good thing. I'm sure, as you'll tell me. So we realize that. So we're raising a decent sized Series A round to be able to do that, right? We want to go build thousands of vessels over the next year because the DoD demand signal is there, right? The reconciliation bill couldn't be louder than that. And to do that and to have the footprint to not just build, but test them, to transport them, to support these units, right? That is a big undertaking. So that's what we're doing. It's still, way less than what some of our competitors have done. But I think, we've shown what we can do with even $1 million, right? In
Right.
pre-seed. We've shown what we can do with $11 million in seed funding. And so I think hopefully we have the trust from the investors to realize that with Series A we're really going to open up this market both on the defense side and on the commercial side.
If Havoc succeeds, how does maritime warfare and deterrence fundamentally change over the next 10 years?
I think we prevent a war from happening in 2027. Right. I think the DoD's biggest thing is peace through strength right now. I think thousands of autonomous vessels in the Pacific signal to the other side not to do this. Right. Like there's no need to cross the strait and invade that island. Think about it. We're a 18-month-old company, but the CCP sanctioned us. I think that's probably why, right? They realized that there were 1,000 things, 1,000 autonomous things powered by our software there. It changes the calculus a little. And we want that to happen, right? We think peace through strength prevent this war from happening because I don't think that's a war anyone wants.
Yeah.
Right.
Amazing. Well, Paul, well said. Thanks so much for being on the show. And very much excited to see you in Rhode Island this summer.
Yeah, definitely. Come on by. Hopefully, we can do another follow-on podcast with boats in the water.
Yeah, we could. Let's let me try it out. Paul, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Mo. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Okay. Bye.